Hey everybody, welcome back to Omens. I'm your host Ryan, AM air pronouns, and this is episode 23, our Pisces episode. Yes, I know yesterday for when this comes out, and today for me, it's the sun's moving into Aries, but like I said last month, I got a rotation going, I'm sticking with it. Fuck it. Um, So, slight difference. I am going to cover an Urbana stone or an Urbana crystal along with the zodiac sign this episode, but I'm not going to do a rune, mostly because I kind of started running out of room on my paper when I was writing everything down, because um, I got some notes from a couple other astrology books besides my usual one, and I'll tell you what they are when they come up. So mostly because I was running out of room, and so the Pisces is going to take a while. And thirdly, because the herb I picked, which, well, it's in the description, so you'll probably know already. I'm going to be talking about cannabis, so warning for basically talking about a freaking drug. And that's going to take me a bit, because that's got a bit to go into. So I went ahead and cut out the rune for today. But, let's go ahead and get right into it. So like I said, the zodiac sign we're talking about today is Pisces. So Pisces is a mutable water sign. It's also the last sign of the zodiac cycle. So again, when we're talking about the zodiac and the different cardinalities, no, I forget what it's called. Modalities of the sign. The different modalities of the sign, we have cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Cardinal is the action taker. Fixed is the doer, and mutable is the changer. So mutable signs tend to be very, very adaptable. They find it very easy to change the way they're doing stuff. Stuff up. Bleh. Change stuff up. Uh, Move from one thing to another very quickly. They're very flexible. It's going to be very hard to trip them off guard. Mutable signs off guard. And when it comes to cardinal, fixed, and mutable, it's not done by the order of the elemental signs. It's done by the order of the signs and how they come. So there's 3 signs to each of the 4 seasons, and the sign that begins each season is the cardinal. The middle of the season is the fixed, and the end of the season, moving into the next one, is the mutable sign. So Pisces comes at the end of winter. So it's when everything is, well, the way Louise Eddington describes it is it's the time after death, right before birth. She really likes to describe it as the amniotic fluid right before birth. Because if we think about it, Aries, as we know, is very much the springtime. Everything is just starting, everything's blooming and whatever. Pisces is the sign right before that. So everything in Pisces tends to be, okay, everything's dead, but we're just getting ready to be reborn. It's like it's that time. It's this There's an anticipation to it. The sign of Pisces is, it's like we're not quite ready to actually go out and plant all the stuff and do all the stuff. We're not quite ready for that, but we can feel it coming. It's right there, and we're like, God, we're so freaking tired because we've just gone through winter, but also winter's nearing its end. So it's like that. It's that time right before you wake up. So if you think about it in if you compare it to sleep cycles, we've got, what is it, 3 different sleep cycles. I forget what all they're called, but I know the first one is when it's that light sleep. You're not really quite asleep, and everything's just slowly starting to slow down. So we could compare that to Capricorn. So everything's starting to slow down. Our body's getting ready to adjust. The middle, which we could the second part of the sleep cycle, which we could compare to Aquarius, is when everything is shut down, but it's not. Everything is shut down. Our brains are off except for the usual vital stuff. Our body is like, okay, all this stuff we need to get cleared up before we wake up again. Get on that. And brain is like, bleh, dead, just like done. It's like we finally fully shut everything off, and except for like the basic vital stuff, and we're just like chillaxing. And then Pisces we could compare to REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. That's the only type of sleep I know. It's that time when we've hit our deepest point of sleep, but stuff starts happening in our unconscious. That's when we dream. That's when stuff really gets done. And that's also at the end of REM sleep is the perfect point to wake up. So there's a way of setting your sleep schedule. The perfect way to kind of do it is if you're able to, obviously, and if you actually take the time and find all this stuff and don't forget it like I did, because you know what, I know how much sleep I need, and I keep forgetting to actually try to look that stuff up. I think I tried once or twice, a couple of times. I tried a couple of times to actually set myself, okay, I need to sleep this many hours, so I'm like going through a full cycle of whatever, and it's like I'm awake before that, because I can't sleep more than 8 hours, and 7 hours is kind of my happy place. But it's different for everyone, but they do recommend that if you can figure out, because they know how long each sleep stage lasts, and if you can basically set it for, I'll wake up at the end of a REM stage, that is when you'll wake up the most awake. So we can think of Pisces as that REM stage. It's like our deepest point of sleep, but we're getting ready to wake up. And Aries is when we wake up, fresh and bright as a daisy. Or fresh as a daisy, I think is the saying. So, all that long rambling on was to just kind of explain kind of the feeling of Pisces in this seasonal aspect. Now we get into the astrological, more metaphysical aspects. And that basically means coming into the personalities of Pisces peoples. Now, granted, if you might realize by now, but I don't really go through each planet in the zodiac sign, because that would take for fucking ever. Molly McCord, she's an astrologer who's got like 30 plus years under her belt, and she's really fucking good. She has a YouTube channel. I don't know her YouTube channel, but she does have her podcast, which is, I believe it's just Molly McCord, or Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. She has on there, and on her YouTube channel in a playlist specifically, but she's got podcasts where she goes through each planet and its expression in each zodiac sign. So she's got like Venus in the 12 astrological signs, and Neptune in the 12 astrological signs and stuff. So if you're curious about the planets beyond the sun and the ascendant, because that's all I do here, go look her stuff up. She is really good. She can, with some of her stuff, it can get a little bit on the new agey side of stuff. That's a little like, okay, but not too far gone. So, and like I said, she knows her stuff. She's a really good astrologer. So check her out if you want to learn more about other planets in the zodiac signs. But so for the sun in Pisces, so from, where do I have it? From the Complete Guide to Astrology by Louise Eddington. So this is my usual book I use. A sun in Pisces is, first of all, it's a night. The other thing about the Pisces sign is it's a night sign. What is it? Inhale, exhale. An exhale sign. So the feeling of Pisces is night, exhale, just that kind of calm. It's mutable water sign. So I guess it's talking about the mutable. It's also a water sign. It's the last of the water signs. Well, mutable, basically it makes the last of the water signs. So, it's very flowing and calm, and again, the ocean. The, Sun in Pisces, it's, frick, I forgot some other stuff. Okay, so, just add more stuff onto it, about Pisces is this. Its symbol, it's this funky looking curved H with a line, it's this, basically, it looks like an H, but the two sides are kind of curved. Pisces means two fish, no. Pisces does mean fish, but that's jumping ahead of myself. But basically that symbol, the curved H, is supposed to kind of represent two fish, and yes, glyphs do not look anything like what they're supposed to represent for the most part. But yeah, it's basically supposed to represent two fish tied together by a cord. And we'll get more into that when we get to the constellation. I lost it again. Where did it go? Honestly. Okay. Time of death and before birth. Pisces is also, in modern astrology, it's ruled by Neptune. In ancient astrology, it's ruled by Jupiter. So Neptune is very dreamy, has a lot to do with our unconscious mind, our intuition, our psychism, basically anything that's not the conscious, logical, rational mind. It's not, it's creativity to a degree, but very subtle, dreamy. Just think dark blues and purples, and yeah, dark blues and purples, and maybe a little bit of dark green. Just think deep ocean. Pisces is kind of your deep ocean. Or actually your middle ocean, because Scorpio would be your deep ocean, like in the Marianas Trench type deal. Scorpio is your Marianas Trench. Pisces is kind of that middle. We're below the surface, but we're not down in the deep. We're kind of floating in that middle area where there's really nothing at all. It's just water. That's kind of where Pisces is. That's what I'm picturing Pisces is. So we've got Neptune, which is kind of... I ran off on a tangent there. Neptune, which rules our psychism, intuition, our dreaming minds. And Jupiter, which is our expander, our teacher, our one of the two great benefics, which basically just means it's a very lucky planet in some understandings of astrology. It's pretty much, Jupiter is also the ruler of Sagittarius, so I've done a Sagittarius episode, so you can go back and listen to that, because I go into a little bit more detail on Jupiter there. But I'd say in Pisces, Jupiter kind of calms down, and it's more just the expansion part. It's not really the teaching part so much as it is in Sagittarius. It's honestly, I'm pretty sure, for the most part, for some of these zodiac signs, they literally assigned rulers because they're like, well, we don't have any other planets. Because they couldn't see the planets because, you know, they're really freaking far away. So Jupiter, and maybe there's more to Jupiter ruling Pisces, but I can't, it does not connect with me at all. Just can't. The polarity of Pisces is Virgo, so the signs that are polarities of each other, they're basically opposing. It's like they're like they're opposites, but they also work pretty well together. So it's like you need the opposite to help balance out the one. So Pisces is very dreamy, floaty, la-di-da-di-da, running off, and Virgo is very detail-oriented, get step by step by step. So you need those two to kind of work in harmony. So if you're more in your Pisces, pull a little Virgo energy in. If you're more in your Virgo, pull a little Pisces energy in, type deal. Alright. Is that all I have on... Yes, okay. That's all I have on the Pisces sign specifically. So people with their sun in Pisces tend to be highly creative and sensitive and mystical. Highly creative, sensitive, and mystical. They're very spiritual and compassionate. They're not very good with boundaries, and they also tend to be extreme empaths. Like, even if they're not like full-on empaths, they tend to be very good at feeling others' emotions, or reading a room really well, or just picking up on energy in general. They tend to be very good at it. I know, like, how many Pisces? I know at least 3 Pisces. And I'm probably going to pull on them for examples, because not going to name names, obviously. I'll probably call them by pseudonyms, because there's like 3 of them, so they might get rather mixed up and confused if I don't give them pseudonyms. Alright, so, but let's get into the rest of this. Highly creative. They don't tend to be very good with boundaries because they're extreme empaths, which can lead them to fall into the role of the victim or the martyr. That's kind of short and sweet. I also dove into Spiritual Astrology by Jan Spiller and Karen McCoy. They go into a little more depth. So they start with the unconscious expression of Pisces. For each zodiac sign, the planet in that zodiac sign, they start with the unconscious expression. This is the basic lower vibration, the focus you don't always realize you have, which can lead to the risk of this unconscious focus, and then this can be the result. And then they'll go into how to actually make a focus that resonates with the sign, and then the result of that. So the first part is the unconscious focus, the asleep focus, they call it, which can be seeking sympathy. For Pisces, for Sun and Pisces, is just they want a sympathetic ear to listen to them. They're very, because Pisces are very dreamy, so they're kind of off on their own head. They want to live in fantasy, and they're very sensitive. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Just let me make that real clear. It's not a bad thing to be sensitive and need somebody, because sometimes shit hurts. And so their asleep focus is they just want someone to comfort them. They want sympathy. They want somebody to go, oh, it's okay, dear. It's okay. Yes, I know the world is horrible. This asleep focus runs the risk of them being impractical, untested, and irresponsible. And the result of that can be the value loss. They can be valueless. That's like they want sympathy, so they'll mutate them, because Pisces are mutable water signs, so they're very good at shape-shifting and adaptability. So they'll be whoever they think you want them to be, so that they can get the sympathy they perceive they need or they want or whatever. So they'll shapeshift, but that can cause them to compromise their own values and lose sight of their and basically their moral compass. Their moral compass becomes non-existent, because they just want to be loved so much that they will do and be anything to anyone. That's a risk. The result of the risk, I should point out, this isn't necessarily every single Pisces that's a sleep focus. I mean, we're all different people with all kinds of different blueprints, and the sun in your zodiac is literally just one part of a massive chart. So just keep that in mind. Sun in Pisces, that loss of value can, in order to live up to others' expectations or what they think others want, can lead to indecisiveness, them being indecisive, ambivalent, lacking commitment, and again can lead to experiencing the role of the destitute victim. And they may become unaware of the difference between grandiose desires and realistic aspirations, and may experience a lack of ideal fulfillment because of that, because they're like, oh, it should all be great in this, and that's not realistic, so they become they add on to the woe is me. I was going to wait, but I'm going to point out here, so the 3 Pisces I know, when I was reading through this unconscious aspect of the Pisces that can become so detrimental and unhealthy, all I could see was this perfectly described a person I knew, one of the Pisces I knew a couple of years ago now, who I had to cut all ties with because she was extremely fucking toxic. God, I need a pseudonym for her. We'll call her Black. So Black was, and not to put anything on the color black, I'm just thinking she had black hair and she wore a lot of black, and so we'll just call her Black, or Goth. You know what? We'll call her Goth. She reminded me very much of a goth person. So Goth, she was, when I first met her, she was sweet, she was funny, she was so much freaking fun to be around with. She liked to say most people didn't realize she was a Pisces. They thought she might be a Scorpio. And I could get that, but as I was reading this, I was like, oh my fucking gods. That is exactly what she was. So there was a lot of shit that went on, but and it involved basically a community that had been built up that eventually basically ended up splitting because she was actually the crux around which how it happened. And I realized after I cut ties that I hadn't seen it while I was in it, but she was extremely well, I kind of got an idea when I found myself Googling what the hell is an emotion, are my friends toxic? How to tell if your friends are toxic. By the way, if you find yourself Googling abusive relationship or is somebody toxic, they probably are, and you're probably in an abusive relationship. She was extremely emotionally and verbally manipulative and abusive, and as one of her strongest supporters last year told me when I'd run onto her of how she's, and this supporter, we'll call her Herb. Herb said, oh, she's just she wants to love and care for everyone, but she tends to get possessive about it. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Goth was very, very, very possessive, but reading through this impractical, untested, and irresponsible, yeah, all the fucking time. Like, Goth was irresponsible as fuck. Very impractical and untested. Just pretended like she knew the shit. She knew everything, and she really didn't. Valueless. She would compromise her values as needed to get people's sympathy. She wanted people's sympathy very, very much. She was indecisive and ambivalent and lacking commitment. Sort of, kind of. She was committed to what she wanted to be committed to, people-wise specifically, and she could be ambivalent because that would help get people to listen to her, or she'd be ambivalent until she figured out what people wanted, and then she would be whatever that was. And the role of the destitute victim, oh fuck yeah. Oh fuck yeah. She loved to play that martyr victim card all the fucking time. And unaware of the difference between grandiose desires and realistic aspirations all the fucking time. So Goth was pretty much that in a nutshell. All that unconscious stuff, yeah, that was her. So very much obvious, a very obvious example of the shadow side of the Pisces. Now, to move on from that, because, yeah, that's a bit of a wound, the conscious, healthier side of Pisces, when you're, like, realizing, when Pisces, Sun in Pisces, realizing, like, hey, I have power, and yeah, the world is huge and scary and rubs me raw, but the healthy focus, or a way of putting it, that they put it in this book, was uplifting others with your own sensitivity. It's like using that sensitivity, using that empathy to help others, to help uplift others, to help others move on, go up. This expression come with recognizing it's, the result is, well, they have it as result, but I'm going to say one of the prime parts of it is recognize the need for practical step-by-step to enact ideals. So basically, pulling in that Virgo energy, like I was talking about, that Virgo detail, it's pulling in that polarity and realizing I can't always just float in this water. If I want to actually get anywhere, I need to have a plan. I need to have details. I need to have a focus. And some of the strength of uplifting others with your sensitivity, is being able, their strengths is becoming an artist, a mystic, a poet, and whatever it is, that basically instead of just living it in your own head, you're able to actually bring it out and use it to help connect others. Because that's a thing with, that's one of the one of the gifts of Pisces is, it is, because it's near the end of the zodiac sign, it's actually in the second half, so the 6 onwards, and that's where we go from the self to the community, and it slowly gets bigger and bigger. So while Aquarius is very much the community individual, Pisces is when we get into um, the unconscious collective. This is where we go from I'm part of the community and I'm an individual to we're all part of something huge, bigger than ourselves. This is where we get into the more spiritual side of stuff, where Aquarius is the air and the mind and a little bit more physical. Pisces is when we get into the underlying spiritual, and Pisceans, and the Sun and Pisces people have the gift of being able to use that knowledge and empathy of the connectivity of everyone to show others that connection. Instead of that unconscious aspect where they ask for a sympathetic ear, where they're always just talking their woe is me, they can instead turn that around and listen to others and give them and push them along, like kind of nudge them along the way to show where their hidden ideals that they are, these people's hidden ideals and desires and motivations, they can bring them to the surface and help them combine them with the ideals that can heal. Their awareness of their own values enables them to relate compassionately to others without losing their own integrity. It's like, and I kind of went off on it, and I just leapfrog to that, but going back, okay, so basically they have the ability to bring out the artistry in other people. They have the ability to listen to other people and then apply it to their own artistry and bring that out, whatever that may be. Like, art covers a huge range of stuff. I'm not going to go into all of it. And part of that is, part of the healthy expression is being aware, like we said, one of the big unconscious expressions, unhealthy expressions of Pisces is wanting to be everything to everyone else, so they lose their own moral compass. They basically, like, just, it's sitting there spinning in a circle of like, whoa, this person likes this way, and whoa, this person likes this way, and this person likes that way. Well, what they need to do with that is, again, pull in some of that Virgo energy, that polarizing energy, and be like, okay, what are my values? What do I believe? What do I see as important? Basically, what are my own values? What is my own morals? What is my own moral integrity? Pisces needs to set that in stone so they can always adhere to what they actually believe, instead of, oh, you believe this? Oh, I believe it too. Oh, wait, over here they believe that. Being able to be integrous to themselves will help the Sun in Pisces be able to move forward on their own path in life, and in independence, and in a higher consciousness, and being able to help bring others along with them, or show others that way. So yeah, and basically having their own value set allows them to help actually relate compassionately to others, instead of just, oh, I'm totally there with you, even though it's not really there. It's like, having different sets of values isn't a bad thing. It's like knowing that you can say, okay, yeah, I can see you believe that, but I believe this, but doesn't mean we can't get along if they kind of relate correctly, and being able to say, okay, your value set is completely fucking different from mine, so I don't actually want to deal with you, be in relationship with you, because that would compromise my own moral integrity. So yeah. Alright, so that's kind of your Sun in Pisces. Some famous Sun in Pisces people are Fred Rogers, or Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Dr. Seuss, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Kurt Cobain. And I was reading this Dr. Seuss and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I was like, God damn, those are two names that have one came up a lot last year and one is coming up this year. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting now to think about it, because we're in that transitional period of leaving behind the Piscean age and entering the age of Aquarius, and or somewhere in there. I think we're near the end of the transitional period, but nobody can actually fucking say. All right. So there's some famous ones. The other part of this that of the zodiac sign is the rising sign I'm going to get into. So rising sign, I took this from Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook by Debbie Kempton Smith. And she describes rising Pisces signs as sweet and sour, tender, brave, and cynical. They tend to be very, again, poetic, sneaky, imaginative. They're highly intuitive and sensitive. Need to check the facts again, because, again, that while our rising sign is more of our projection outward and the kind of the first face we show to the world, it can be very important to our sense of self. It's very important to, it's a very important part of our sense of self, I should say. So again, that polarity of Virgo needs to come in to keep them from wandering off. Same with the same way the sun in Pisces will. They need to check the facts and get their logic down, and all that. So, they so like I said, they need to check their facts, like pull in that Virgo energy. They can either be strong and brave or ace martyrs, and they align how they choose. Basically, the Pisces and rising, she describes them as opposed to the sun, which is it's kind of their core part. Pisces risings tend to be a little bit more easily mutable in how they show their face, because it is that the rising sign is the face we show. It's not our core sense of self, so it's not quite as overt as the sun in Pisces would be, but it's a little bit more, or sorry, it's not quite as deep as the sun in Pisces would be, but it's a bit more overt and a little bit more easily changeable. Louise Eddington describes them as dreamers, floating in fantasy, and empathic sponges and shapeshifters, susceptible to manipulative people, and oftentimes also susceptible to drugs, even prescription drugs. Which makes sense, because Pisces, one of its unhealthy expressions is escapism, trying to live in the fantasy realm instead of having to deal with the harshness of reality that sometimes can the harshness of reality that can sometimes exist, or most of the times exists, sadly. And then, as we also know in astrology, rising signs kind of a little bit show how you look physically. Louise describes them as, Miss Eddington describes them as being often beautiful, shimmery, and ethereal people. Now, Debbie Kempton Smith describes them as being short of body, large eyes, and mussed hair. That she also described, I didn't write it down, she described them as being a little bit fishy-faced, and I'm like, I really? I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but okay. Maybe somebody else knows what fish-faced is actually supposed to be. I can't think of it. Maybe just certain squat and kind of forward-facing. I don't know. Of the Pisces people I know, short definitely describes it. Goth was very ethereal. And then I'm going to call the second one I know. Her name's going to be Purple. She is a little bit more squat of stature and rounded, and but she does have a very ethereal quality about her. I will say that the third Pisces I know, he's a little bit short. He's around my height, so not too ungodly short. I could see Fish Face for definitely describing Goth. I'm not sure about the other two. And as for the guy Pisces, I know I don't think ethereal or mystical or anything describes him very well at all. Wait. He doesn't have Pisces. Why am I saying that? That's the Pisces rising for all of them. I don't think any of them have Pisces rising. Oh my god, I know 4 Pisces. I just realized. I just remembered the 4th one. 4th one that I do know has Pisces rising and is a Pisces sun. They are... All of that describes them. Everything about that. Not quite so much ethereal and shimmery, maybe, but definitely short and fish-faced. And no one is ever allowed to tell them I said that. Oh, wait. They might watch this. Shit. Totally not you. Alright. Some famous people with a rising sign, rising in Pisces are Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Robert Redford, and Bruno Mars. The only one who I didn't know, and I don't know how many other people will, are Robert Redford, is apparently the person who created the Sundance Festival. Or something. Alright, so that is the zodiac sign of Pisces. So the constellation of Pisces, it's kind of a sideways looking V with a circle on the westernmost end. It's mostly visible just with the way the sky has slowly changed. It's actually more visible nowadays in the autumn, or basically September, October, November time of year is more when it's actually visible in the sky. Again, Pisces means the fish, and in medical astrology it rules the feet, the toes, and the thalamus gland. The myth of the constellation of Pisces, there's a couple of ways of telling it. Well, there's only near the end it kind of, or end or middle, diverges. There's only one slight divergence, I should say. So where the constellation of Pisces comes from is in Greek myth there was a god or a titan. I think he was actually a titan, but the one place I was looking described him as a god, called Typhon. He was described as a giant being with the torso and head of a man, giant wings, and then hair was partially snakes that were flaming or screaming all the time. Yeah, mostly snakes that screamed all the time. And then his bottom half, his legs were actually snakes. So, very interesting looking guy. And anyway, the rest of the gods didn't like him very much, which Greeks were assholes. So he got fed up at some point and decided he's going to show how strong he was, and went straight up to Mount Olympus to attack them. I don't know how the whole story goes with that, but the part we're concerned about is, in this myth, basically all the gods saw him coming and were like, "Ah, shit," and ran for it. Aphrodite and Eros, the 2 gods of love, their escape was, this is where it gets, this is where we got 2 different stories. So in the first one, they tied themselves together with a cord, transformed into fish, and leapt off into the river. And this is part of a whole there's a bunch of constellations here in the ocean part of the sky, it's called, or the sea, that are all kind of interconnected. There's actually a constellation, the river Epicadar, I forget what it's called. It starts with an E. That is supposed to be the river they jumped into. So they transformed themselves into fish, and jumped into the river, and to try to escape Typhon. And they tied themselves with a cord so they wouldn't lose each other. The second way of telling it is that they didn't transform into fish, but 2 fish appeared and were like, "Hey, we'll help you escape." So they jumped on their backs and escaped that way. And in gratitude, they placed the fish in the sky as a constellation afterwards. See, the cord makes more sense if they transform themselves, but the constellation part makes more sense if it was fish who carried them. So, do what you will with it, in that case, honestly, because it's a myth. So it's a story, and therefore stories are changeable as you like. But yeah, so they escaped Typhon, and like I said, I don't know the story of Typhon, but that is the constellation, which very short compared to some other constellations. Alright, so that's the zodiac. Next part of this is the crystal. So the crystal I chose for this, I I was going to go with aquamarine because that was the one that was like 99% of the time showing up for Pisces stones, and then I realized I'd done that for Aquarius last month. So the next most common, actually pretty much the same amount that showed up for Pisces, was rose quartz. So rose quartz is, well, it's a quartz stone, obviously, so anything that applies to clear quartz, you can kind of take the basics of that and apply it to any other form of quartz, but rose quartz in specifically is a stone of unconditional love and infinite peace. It's very much a heart-focused stone. Heart and love-focused stone. So it purifies and opens the heart to all levels, at all levels. Where'd it go? Ran away. And brings deep inner healing and self-love. It's a very calming and reassuring stone. It is definitely very calm and loving. Like, I've got a couple pieces of rose quartz. It's a very interesting vibration. Not quite the one I like to carry around all the time, but it's definitely peaceful. Not peaceful the same way like amethyst is. It's a bit more, well, it's pink. That's the only way I can describe the feeling, is pink. Which, I don't know. If you describe feelings in colors, that might help. If you don't, you might be confused as fuck, but I can't describe it any other way because that's just how my brain works. Again, it's very calming and reassuring. It's also very good at attracting love. The Crystal Bible by Judy Hall, which is where I got this info, describes it as sometimes it's so good at attracting love that it might need amethyst beside it to kind of calm those vibes down, because it's very much a romance stone, and I'm a romantic, so that might be why I don't vibe with it very well. But amethyst might be needed to help kind of calm down some of the bring the love. Like, no, that's because amethyst is the stone of sobriety. So it's like, okay, yes, we know you love everybody at the bar, but let's just sit down, drink this glass of water type deal. It's also, it helps, it gently draws off negativity and encourages self-worth healing. So rose quartz is very good for self-love, self-worth healing, anything to do with it, along those same lines, value, harmony. I read all this and I figured all the words. But yeah, it's also apparently pretty good for helping to strengthen your actual physical heart and your cardiovascular system, but don't take any medical advice from me because I'm not a medical practitioner or a specialist or whatever the fuck the word is. Either way, I don't do medical. And then the other part of its romance thing is while it's very good at attracting love, if you're doing like I want to draw in a partner in love type spell, you can use it. But if you're already in an established relationship, you can also use it. It will help to restore or keep harmony and trust in an existing relationship. So it's rose quartz all around. It is an extremely loving ethereal stone, and goddamn, so much freaking pink. It's like, just stop piling that on. Alright, so that was kind of the middle part of calm down, so let's get again into more heavy stuff. So again, like I said, I'm not doing a rune, because this last part is the herb that I picked for Pisces, which is cannabis. Quick disclaimer. I do not, nor have I ever used cannabis, and while I'd be curious to try edibles, I'm not currently planning to ever use cannabis, so not a cannabis user. I do know a couple of cannabis users, but so this is coming from very much an outside perspective. I basically just went to the Wikipedia page for most of this information. I'm going to go more into the history and some of the actual physical properties of cannabis more than I am going to go into the metaphysical stuff. Metaphysical-wise, for actually using cannabis, I'll get to that when I get to that part. I do have a reference for someone who uses cannabis for spirituality. that I will throw in here when I get to that part. So cannabis as a plant is actually indigenous to Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent. Its uses for, so like I said, pretty much all of this is coming from Wikipedia. Its uses for fabric and rope date back to the Neolithic age in China and Japan. It's unclear when cannabis first became known for its psychoactive properties, because nobody actually writes that shit down. The oldest archaeological evidence for the burning of cannabis was found in Romanian kurgans, which I don't know what those are, dated 3500 BCE, and scholars suggest the drug was first used in ritual ceremonies by Proto-Indo-European tribes living in the Pontic Caspian steppe during the Chalcolithic period. I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry if I screwed it up. A custom they eventually spread throughout Western Eurasia during the Indo-European migrations. Some research suggests the ancient Indo-Iranian drug soma, mentioned in the Vedas, sometimes contained cannabis. This is based on the discovery of a basin containing cannabis in a shrine in the 2nd millennium BCE in Turkmenistan. Cannabis was known to the ancient Assyrians, who discovered its psychoactive properties through the Iranians. Using it in some religious ceremonies, they called it kunabu, meaning a way to produce smoke, a probable origin of the modern word cannabis. The Iranians also introduced cannabis to the Scythians, Thracians, and Dacians, whose shamans, the kapnobati, those who walk on smoke or clouds, burned cannabis in frutisences. I don't know what that word is. Anyway, they burned cannabis to induce trance. The plant was used in China before 2800 BCE and found therapeutic use in India by 1000 BCE, where it was used in food and drink, including bhang. Cannabis has an ancient history of ritual use and is found in pharmacological cults around the world. The earliest evidence of cannabis smoking has been found in the 2,500-year-old tombs of Jerzonko Cemetery in the Pamir Mountains in western China, where cannabis residue were found in burners with charred pebbles, possibly used during funeral rituals. Hemp seeds discovered by archaeologists at Pazirk suggest early ceremonial practices like eating by the Scythians occurred during the 5th to 2nd century BCE, confirming previous historical reports by Herodotus. It was used by Muslims and various Sufi orders as early as the Mamluk period, for example by the Qalandars. Smoking pipes uncovered in Ethiopia and carbon dated around circa CE 1320 were found to have traces of cannabis. So that's kind of its ancient history. So, long-ass history of being used in ritual and probably some medicinal uses, like most plants on the planet, so ta-da. More modern history, following in 1836 to 1840 travel in North Africa and the Middle East, French physician Jacques-Joseph Moreau wrote on the psychological effects of cannabis use. He was a member of Paris's Club des Hassachins. That's not French. I did not pronounce that right. In 1842, Irish physician William Brooke O'Shaughnessy, who had studied the drug while working as medical officer in Bengal in the East India Company, brought a quantity of cannabis with him on his return to Britain, provoking renewed interest in the West. Examples of classic literature of the period featuring cannabis include Les Paradis Artificiels, 1860 by Charles Baudelaire, and The Hashish Eater, 1857 by Fitzhugh Ludlow. Cannabis was criminalized in various countries beginning in the 19th century. The colonial government of Mauritius banned cannabis in 1840 over concerns on its effects on Indian indentured workers. Basically, they didn't want their indentured workers, probably slaves, I'm going to guess, being able to relax, wind down, and, not have to deal with, well, the effects of harsh reality. Because it was stupid reality. This same occurred in Singapore in 1870. In the United States, the first restrictions on the sale of cannabis came in 1906 in the District of Columbia. Canada criminalized cannabis in the Opium and Narcotic Drug Act 1923 before any reports of the use of the drug in Canada, but eventually legalized its consumption for recreational and medicinal purposes in 2018. This is where it starts getting a little bit more A little bit more detail. In 1925, compromise was made at International Conference in The Hague about the International Opium Convention that banned exportation of Indian hemp to countries that have prohibited its use and required importing countries to issue certificates approving the importation and stating that the shipment was required exclusively for medical or scientific purposes. In the United States in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed and prohibited the production of hemp in addition to cannabis. Basically, this slowly goes through a whole how it's being slowly, like, criminalized through all the way up through the 1920s. In Uruguay, President Jose Mujica signed legislation to legalize recreational cannabis in December 2013, making Uruguay the first country in the modern era to legalize cannabis. In August 2014, Uruguay legalized growing up to 6 plants at home, as well as the formation of growing clubs and a state-controlled marijuana dispensary regime. And since then, it's slowly becoming more and more legalized. It's still illegal in most of the world, but there's a few places where it's becoming legalized. And there's history. I'm not very good at it because I'm not very well versed in it, but a lot of drug use, especially when it came to cannabis and the whole calling it marijuana, which was racially motivated. That's what I'm looking for. Don't know all the history and effects behind that. I'll point you to a good resource for that in a bit. Now, as for cannabis itself, it has various mental and physical effects, which include euphoria, altered states of mind and sense of time, difficulty concentrating, impaired short-term memory and body movement, relaxation, and an increase in appetite. Sounds like alcohol, basically. At high doses, however, mental effects can include anxiety, delusions, and hallucinations, panic, paranoia, and psychosis. There is a strong relation between cannabis use and the risk of psychosis, though the direction of causality is debated. Basically, they don't know whether the psychosis comes before the cannabis or the cannabis comes before the psychosis. I don't know. Physical effects include increased heart rate, difficulty breathing, nausea, and behavioral problems in children whose mothers used cannabis during pregnancy. Short-term side effects may also include dry mouth and red eyes. Long-term adverse effects may include addiction, decreased mental ability in those who started regular use as adolescents, chronic coughing, and susceptibility to respiratory infections. I'm going to guess that the chronic coughing and susceptibility to respiratory infections is probably because of smoking it, because, as we all know, burning and smoking anything, being it cannabis, tobacco, or herbal cigarettes, you're getting carbon monoxide and tar in your lungs. No matter what it is, you're breathing in smoke. That's where cancer comes from. As far as I know. Don't take my word for it. For the most part, it's mostly used recreationally or as a medicinal drug, though it may also be used for spiritual purposes, which is kind of where our direction lies. It's the most commonly used illegal drug in the world. Though it's legal in some jurisdictions, obviously. And then, as we're getting into psychoactive stuff, while cannabis plants have been grown since at least the 3rd millennium BCE, evidence suggests that it was being smoked for psychoactive effects at least 2,500 years ago in the Pamir Mountains. The earliest evidence found at a cemetery in what is today western China, close to the tri-point with Tajikistan and Afghanistan. Alright, that stuff we've already read through. I'm not going to get into the medical stuff. There are side effects. This is something to look into and actually do all your research for, because anything and everything you can use can have pretty bad side effects if not used properly. It's especially bad if it's short-term. Well, nah. Let's go past that. So, one of the big things that I have that I'm not too sure about using it personally is because they do have research that it can cause like some brain impairment, usually small stuff like executive functioning, but it's usually found in the older populations, which may reflect heavier cannabis exposure or developmental effects associated with adolescent cannabis use. The decrease in memory, what was it? There was a study I saw that it could impair your drive functions, your drive to actually get up and go do stuff. It makes you more like just laid back because it is a depressant. It's mostly something to do research on. Now, as for the spiritual stuff, it's held sacred status in several religions and has served as an entheogen, a chemical substance used in religious, shamanic, or spiritual contexts in the Indian subcontinent since the Vedic period, dating back to approximately 1500 BCE, but perhaps as far back as 2000 BCE. There are several references in Greek mythology to a powerful drug that eliminated anguish and sorrow. Herodotus wrote about early ceremonial practices by the Scythians, thought to have occurred from the 5th to 2nd century BCE. In modern culture, the spiritual use of cannabis has been spread by the disciples of the Rastafari movement, who use cannabis as a sacrament and as an aid to meditation. The earliest known reports regarding the sacred status of cannabis in the Indian subcontinent come from the Atharva Veda, estimated to have been composed sometime around 1400 BCE. And this is from another site of a spiritual user of cannabis. Cannabis has been included in magical, religious, and spiritual rites for millennia, from Hindu sadhus to use cannabis as a prayer to Lord Shiva to Coptic Christians who burned it on altars as a devotional offering. Witches and warlocks, too, have a long history with this helper, utilizing it for everything from medical remedies to summoning spirits. Cannabis and hemp were both staples in folk traditions. In his 1653 Complete Herbal, which, this is interesting, Arthur Nicholas Culpeper wrote of the plant, "This is so well known to every good housewife in the country that I shall not need to write any description of it." I'm like, God damn, Culpeper. Some classic uses for cannabis were in spells and rites dedicated to healing, love, money drawing, visions, and meditation. Love-struck witches would wander out under the midsummer full moon to sprinkle hemp seeds while circling a church 9 times in hopes of seeing their true love. Witches attempting to see into the future would burn an incense made of cannabis, mugwort, coltsfoot, and angelica in front of a magic mirror, watching for signs in the reflection of the glass. Perhaps the most infamous usage of cannabis in magic is its inclusion in the famed witch's flying ointment. Blended with other mind-altering substances like opium poppies, morning glories, datura, belladonna, and nightshade. Ta-da! A poisoner's cocktail. And mixed with butter or lard, witches would smear it on their broomsticks and ride them, flying off in ecstatic, orgasmic bliss. Okay, honey. If that's your thing, you do you. Modern witches can replicate this by blending cannabis with small amounts of other entheogens like ayahuasca, sinusins, or magic mushrooms, and of course poppies. For an entirely legal version, cunning folks can create a weed blend with blue lotus, wild asparagus root, and mugworts. Make a tincture or decoction from your herbal blend and mix it with coconut oil for a bewitching lube to help you open up and push into the universe with love, lust, and love. Oh my god, I should have read that. Should have read that before reading it. That's hilarious. Alright, but you can also turn your cannabis to use in a magical act. Do you like for crystals? She recommends, this is where I kind of cut off my picture by accident. She recommends, like, using, what is it? A pipe made of, like, crystals. Like, say, for her example, she gives us lapis lazuli, stone known for facilitating intellectual activity. Yeah, that's basically lapis lazuli, using it as a pipe and smoking cannabis in it to kind of help stimulate a specific spell work. Good resource if you want to know more about cannabis, because, like I said, I don't use it. I really don't research it. I just brought it up because it is very relevant to Pisces, from what I can find, and it's one of the multitude of herbs that are one of the few herbs that came up multiple times with Pisces. As we can see, because it's an entheogen, it's related to spiritual activity and shutting off the conscious everyday mind to go into the unconscious, more astral, more spiritual minded area of your brain. And all that. A good resource for this that I know of is the Paige Vanderbeck, the Fat Feminist Witch. She has a blog and a podcast. And on her podcast, the one that I know for sure is episode, I want to say 41, which is Weed, Women, and Witches, I think it's called. Or Women, Weed, and Witches. I think it's Weed, Women, and Witches. It's 3 W's. I know it's those 3 words, I just don't remember the order. She is actually a user of cannabis for both medicinal and spiritual purposes, I believe. I know for sure spiritual, I think medicinal, I'm not 100% sure on that one. I think she's got a couple episodes featuring cannabis and probably multiple blog posts as well. She's a really good source for that, so I'm gonna direct you to her for that kind of information, because like I said, not a user, I just look up shit on Wikipedia. Alright, so we're sitting at an hour, and yeah, glad I didn't do a runestone. That's all I got for you today. Hit me up if you got questions or whatnot, or comments. Put them down below in the comments box. Follow, and subscribe. Like and subscribe here on YouTube. Find me on Facebook at Bags and Omens. I got a Patreon as well, Bags and Omens. And yeah, if you got a long comment or question or whatever, you can email me at bagsandomens@gmail.com. But yeah, all the links will be down in the description below. And I guess that's it for me. So y'all have a good rest of your whatever, and I'll see you next week when we get onto a major arcana that I can't remember which one it is right now. Okay, bye.